Karyn.
Hi there.
Hi, Karyn. It's me. I'm gonna flip.
Hi, Walter.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Really well. It's been too long. I'm gonna turn the camera around so that you can see our amazing moderation. I thank you so much for being here. We all just watched Jennifer's Body. Big round of applause for Jennifer's Body. Oh yeah, we got a full house. A lot of buzzing. Okay. So they're gonna introduce themselves, but here are Savannah and Tiggy.
Hi, my name is Savannah Brassell. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and your films are incredibly inspiring. Jennifer's Body really spoke to me.
Recording in progress.
I felt recording in progress. But I felt very seen, so thank you so much for producing something amazing, and thank you for everything you've done for female directors.
Oh, well, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tiggy Agok. I want to say thanks again for taking the time to speak with us today. I also really love Jennifer's Body. Yeah, it's a really good movie. I find all your work so inspiring and motivating, especially as a woman of color. And I'm really inspired by your work.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And Tiggy's going to start us off with the first question.
Okay, cool.
So after watching Jennifer's Body, I was just wondering what movies made you want to explore the horror genre, and what movies inspired Jennifer's Body?
Great question. I mean, for me, horror has always been a part of my experience of movies and some of my most powerful experiences in the theater. When I was in freshman year of college, I saw Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark, which really was this incredible mashup of a vampire saga and a Western and a kind of love story. And I feel like seeing that genre hybrid was really inspiring to me. But in the same time that I was watching films like that, I was looking at much more kind of straightforward horror films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Rosemary's Baby and I mean, just there's so many Dario Argento's films, David Cronenberg's films. So there were a lot of movies that really influenced me. But when I think about Jennifer's Body in particular, it was more about that tonal hybrid between comedy and horror and comedy and drama. So for me, I was thinking about the high school comedies that I loved growing up, like Valley Girl and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And then there was another sort of subset of high school experience movies like Heathers and Ginger Snaps. And then there was yet another layer of horror films that combined comedy quite deftly, like American Werewolf in London and The Howling. And so those are movies that I had been interested in before, and I kind of brought my interest in those to making Jennifer's Body. And then once the cast was all together and we were in prep on the weekends, I would say, like, you know, I'm ordering pizzas and we're going to watch Evil Dead 2. And so it was about kind of creating a vibe around that tonal hybrid in the film.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome. And speaking of the cast of Jennifer's Body, how did you work with Amanda and Megan to really create that relationship between Needy and Jennifer?
That's a great question. I mean, they had not met before the film, so they got to know each other like while we were doing costume fittings and makeup tests, and that took about a week before we started shooting. So there was an opportunity for them to get to know each other and kind of privately dig into what they imagined their histories were. And they did such a great job of that. Like as soon as they were working together on the first day of shooting, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to totally work. And so they spent, I mean, actually the whole cast spent a lot of time together, which I do think helps create this vibe of like the intensity of high school relationships, teenage friendships, teenage love relationships. And I think for them, they have very different ways of working. Like on set, they were very different from one another in terms of their approach to character, but they seem to have a real understanding of the history between those two characters.
Awesome, thank you.
So initially, when Jennifer's Body came out, it didn't have the best audience rating. Why do you think that Jennifer's Body ended up becoming a cult classic? And could you talk to me about the feminist themes and how they apply now?
Sure. Those are, I mean, that could occupy an hour right there. I'm not going to take an hour to answer those questions, but I will say that, I mean, I feel like a lot of my work, but a lot of work that I really love is not necessarily in step with the moment that it's made. I say this now, and it's not even like a brag or a humble brag. It's just the truth. My work is a little bit ahead of its time. It tends to be. And so I feel like when I made Jennifer's Body, all I could say when I was making it and when I was watching it was, I love this movie. I love what this movie is doing. I love what it's making me feel. And I think, I don't know, I think there was just something really confrontational in a way about the movie, in that this world of female communication that had its own sort of private language and private logic was the center of the movie to a large degree, and the horror plot kind of hung off of it, but ultimately it was about this very complicated friendship between these two girls, and I just feel like that kind of relationship, for better or for worse, is evergreen. You know, we're always going to have complicated relationships with people we're really close to, that maybe we think we're in love with, that maybe we think we hate, like, you know, and that to me felt like kind of, it's always going to find an audience to me at some point. And I just had to, you know, sadly wait a while for the audience to find the movie, but I feel so grateful and lucky that the audience did.
I love that, thank you.
Yeah, it really is such a good film.
Thanks.
I love it. When you were creating Jennifer's Body, it's really clear that you created a purposeful style, particularly for the outdoor movement shots, to create tension. And what would be your advice for creating style within movement shots?
It's funny. I do you mean like in terms of just particular moving camera shots that I was using?
Yeah, I really love what you did with almost making it feel like Jennifer Needy is prowling outside of stuff, and it's almost like a POV, and I was like, that's such a fascinating lens to film that through. I would have never thought of that. So like your process on coming up with like, here's how I could tell this in a movement shot, and here's like what it would mean to the audience. Yeah,
I mean, this movie needed, I think, to have a kind of particular visual vocabulary. I think every story needs its own vocabulary. And in the case of this film, I was doing, I think, a couple of things, or I was trying anyway to, which was sort of riff on the visual vocabulary of movies that came before it, that it was also sort of not spoofing, but recalling or referencing. And a lot of that does have to do with point of view, and it's almost become a trope, a visual trope, this idea that we're in the point of view, for instance, in terms of slasher films, in the point of view of a killer. You know, there's so much discourse around that concept of point of view and the notion of the male gaze and the notion of slasher and horror films, particularly in the way that they objectify girls and women. And I needed to both find a way to utilize some of that visual language for myself, but I hope also subvert it. And a big part of the subversion in my mind was from providing beauty, providing pleasure, and providing an authentic female point of view. And when I say that, I just mean my point of view. People can watch it and they can disagree with it. They can not love the way it looks or feels. But for me, I just felt like I know every day that I was making that film, I was paying attention to every aspect of those girls' lives and those male characters' lives, but in terms of how they presented themselves, in terms of their costume, their makeup, their hair, and all of that also spoke back to how we saw them with the camera. As I've gotten older, what we do with the camera and what we choose to show is so profound, and it's a really big choice each time you set up a shot. And yet I'm also getting a little bit less freaked out by the cultural or political implications of it. Sometimes you just need to see a person's face emote and do something, interesting on an emotional level. So at the time I was trying to find that balance between movies that used that visual language and could kind of have a pleasure of hooking into teen horror, while also finding something new there and more personal to me.
That's really
I don't know if that really answers the question, but
It totally does. That's really fascinating and it really reads, so thank you.
Oh, thanks.
So you talked a little bit about how a lot of horror films tend to objectify their female characters and they don't really have an authentic female point of view. In the years since Jennifer's Body, do you think there's been progress in making more films like that?
It's a tough question to answer in that I feel like what I struggle with as a filmmaker is what all of us are going to struggle with as filmmakers unless we're living under a rock, which sometimes I wish I was. But that struggle is that the patriarchy works because all of us participate in it. And so I have ingested images and visual strategies that are, you could argue, not even necessarily, quote, the patriarchy. It's more that it's just a visual strategy of what was kind of the dominant culture, filmmaking culture of what came before. And so for me, I have to find my way in. I have to depart from that in my own way. And I think for me, I'm always aware of the fact that as soon as you are shooting, as soon as a camera is absorbing light and creating an image, there is the possibility of corruption or exploitation or violence or just doing wrong by someone. And so it's kind of like my responsibility to figure out our relationship to what we're watching. When I think about Jennifer's Body, probably the biggest tonal, thematic, political struggle for me of the film was the sacrifice scene where Jennifer is being sacrificed on that rock. And it's interesting because the critics, when they largely dismissed the film, they often described that scene as the gang rape scene. And it was so interesting because it proved to me they didn't really watch it with enough care to even call it by what it was, which was a human sacrifice. But that also the equation of gang rape and human sacrifice, that somehow the ideas were the same, right? And I had to struggle with how much are we meant to feel like what is happening to this character is real and authentically terrifying, and how much can I and should I evoke empathy for Jennifer in this moment when she is also having lines that can read as funny and absurd, and so do all of the characters around her who are terrorizing her. And so that kind of scene is just one of those things that you have to, or I had to wrestle with in terms of like, what does it say to depict this image? You know, like, what does it mean that I've created another image that of a woman being terrorized, of a woman being violated? And I have to wrestle with that. Like, it's not as easy from film to film for me to just make those images. I actually have to ask myself, like, is there value to seeing them? You know what I mean?
Yes, that's very insightful. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm writing that down. That's a really great nugget of advice.
I'm so curious, are the questions from the whole class, or how does it work, the questions?
Yeah, these ones are written by us, and then we'll have audience members as they gather questions come up as well. So.
Oh, cool. That's cool. All right.
Yeah. So something I really loved in Jennifer's Body was your intuition to create tension with shutter speed manipulation or change in frame rate. And I was wondering if you could talk on how you make decisions surrounding when to change the frame rate and manipulate.
Yeah. I mean, we were really lucky. We got to work with this camera called the Phantom, which at the time was a very kind of cutting edge camera that could shoot film at 1,000 frames a second, which I really wanted to use for that sequence when Jennifer and Needy are falling away from each other in like super, super, super slow-mo. And the reason I wanted to use that kind of frame rate was I really feel like a lot of the stories of our lives happen within seconds. Whether it's a look exchanged with somebody or a moment that we decide not to look at a person or dismiss them or reach out to them, that there's like seismic change that can happen in a life within seconds. And so I knew I wanted that particular sequence of them finally falling away from one another and being no longer bound to one another to have kind of the quality of epic, almost like mythological rupture. And so luckily for me, the movie was inexpensive to make. It was like a $15 million movie, but at the time that felt like a good amount of money for me to make the movie. And I was able to use that camera, for instance. Had I not been able to use that camera, I would have had to figure out another method to create that effect. That probably would have meant a couple more technical steps with the cameras, using the cameras I already had. But something I would say in terms of making those decisions is that I tend to think in pictures. I tend to understand a story by how I see the story unfolding. And so as long as I'm in like an organic conversation with myself about how I'm seeing the story, it's just a question of communicating really clearly to my whole crew about what it is I need and want from those images.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Karyn, I want to interrupt really quick. I really love, as you know, I love Aeon Flux, and every couple of years I bug you about this. It's the 20th anniversary this year. What do you think about finally seeing your cut of that?
You know what's funny? My cut, it's like on a disc, and I don't actually know, and maybe it's on a hard drive, but I don't know how to play it. Like everything, all the technology has changed in that 20 years so much. And I never got an opportunity to transfer that version to something like more updated. It's funny, Walter, because you and my friend Ryan Johnson, you both are like, how can we see the Karyn Kusama cut of Aeon Flux? Which, by the way, I might watch it now and just be like, whoa, this completely sucks. But my sense is it's probably better than what was in theaters. I appreciate what you've just said, but yeah, I don't know how to play it. I got to figure out if I can find a format for you, Walter.
You know, you have 100 young people here who know all sorts of stuff, and I'm pretty sure we can figure out between us how to play
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, no, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I'm actually in the process of like going through all my like film materials. And so once I get my hands on some of those Aeon Flux cuts, I will try to understand what they are from 20 years ago.
Well, I'm very serious about this. We can, talk to some of these distributors and stuff. There is a greater hunger than you imagine for your cut of that film. That film is fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how different it is from the movie that ended up in the theater. That is true.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, enough of it made it there, like the sentient grass and stuff. That's ridiculously amazing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just want more of that. So, anyway, I'm sorry, I just hijacked it. I'm gonna let. I think there's some audience questions too, right?
We're gonna have Tiggy ask one, and then we've got audience questions
Great.
lined up.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Go ahead.
Okay, so 16 years after the release of Jennifer's Body, what are your biggest takeaways from the experience?
That it really is so important to love the story you're telling and to love it unconditionally in a way. Like, I think of every movie as like this child that, is part of like some family I'm creating. And I really believe that what I just said about Aeon Flux notwithstanding, it's important to love the thing you've made or to find the reason you're there. And in the case of making Jennifer's Body, like the script was so funny. I would read it and laugh till I was crying. And I saw this opportunity to make these kind of lyrical passages that were visually really interesting between these two characters that were kind of commenting on the horror that I loved growing up, that was a little bit more flamboyant and a little bit more tongue-in-cheek. And so I do think it's just really important to go toward the work you're making with open arms. So even when the movie was rejected by audiences and by critics, I didn't believe that was a referendum on the movie. I just sort of believed it was a referendum on the moment it was released, So I think that's sort of, I guess that's my takeaway, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's great. Thank you.
All right, we have a student, Carter, who has a question for you.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't expecting to actually get picked.
I like your question. Come ask.
Okay, so I actually came up with two questions, now I gotta decide which one to ask. Okay. What was your favorite scene to film in the movie, in Jennifer's Body? Like, is there any particular scene that, like, you had a lot of fun making?
Well, it kind of depends on how I define it. Like, there was a period where in the shoot where we were shooting for almost a month purely at night. So like, I had a 1-year-old, my son at the time, with me, and I would have to leave him with the nanny at like 4 PM to go to the location and then not come home till 5 or 6 the next morning. And he would want to play and I would need to sleep. And it was like, I can't believe this is happening. It was such a discombobulating way to work as a parent of a young child. And I got to do things like the Melody Lane fire scene where we like blew up a barn. Like we built a barn and then we like set it on fire. And it was just so, there's just something like, the part of me that is not that intellectual was just kind of like, it's pretty cool to just like set big objects on fire. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like that's pretty fun, I think what was really there were so many interesting things, but there was another scene between Johnny Simmons, who plays Chip, and Amanda, who plays Needy, when they're by that abandoned pool, and Chip has been mortally wounded by Jennifer, and it was the death scene, and she's in the like pink prom dress. And filming that scene, like Amanda it was as if this was Lady Macbeth or this was Ophelia. That like she played it like it was a genuine tragedy, and the whole crew could feel that it wasn't a joke to her, and it wasn't a joke to Johnny. Like they were so in this real moment, despite the absurdity of the circumstances and of the story. They played it for real. And when you feel that on a set, it's kind of the most gratifying thing you can experience, because you're taking something seriously, even if it's itself not that serious. And that is such a good feeling, to kind of lose your ego and just all be there together, like making a weird piece of art. So that was probably one of my favorite days.
Wow. That's pretty cool. But I guess.
Thank you.
Do you mind if
Yes.
I ask the other question too?
Please go for it.
You might have actually answered it when you talked about like your son and like having him be taking care of the nanny, but is there any like regrets you have about anything you did when you're making the movie? Like anything you wish you could have done better?
Gosh, regrets. I don't really traffic in regrets, because if I did, I would not get out of bed every day. I mean, there's so much room for regret in our life. And the thing that I try to do is regret less and reflect more, and try to figure out like, okay, why did that situation go the way that it did? What, like, I think I regret that, there was a new platform on which people communicated called Twitter. And that was what destroyed the life of the film in its opening weekend, because it was at the time, and come full circle now again, it was driven by a kind of misogynist strain that just algorithmically rose to the top. And so I'm not saying that's what everyone on Twitter is or was, but it was more like that's what was loudest and noisiest, and that's what got all the amplification. And so for me, I was like, wow, I didn't know that this was going to be such a component to the film's kind of viral failure. But more than anything, it's like, I guess you could say that one regrets what they don't know, but one is also sort of saved by what they don't know. In a weird way, it's a good thing I never knew what was coming to hit me. So.
Yeah. Twitter sucks. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Now we have a question from Sophie.
Great.
Hi, I'm Sophie.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, you have such a wide variety in the movies that you have directed and scripts that you've chosen. And I just want to know what kind of goes into your thought process, and when you get a script, what kind of compels you to want to pursue it, and what kind of maybe makes you decide not to?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because I actually go through a version of it pretty regularly where I have to determine if I want to pursue something or if I want to respectfully decline. And honestly, it's something about two things. For me, I am not somebody who wants to repeat myself. Like, I don't see myself as someone who works within a single genre, or who only wants to work in a certain genre, for instance. So oftentimes what I want to do is do something very different than the last thing I did. And so that's definitely a component for me. Like, is this different? Is this different enough? And hang on, I'm just going to close this door. But more than anything, it's a question of like, do I feel something strongly when I'm reading it? And is it something, do I imagine that an audience could go on that ride with me? And am I the person to help craft that ride? And the thing is that there are all kinds of movies out there, and there are all kinds of reasons that we watch movies, but I tend to want to watch movies that leave you with a feeling, whether you like the feeling or not. It's all about sort of pushing an audience into feeling something. And so that's what I'm looking for from the page. And I would say that the one thing I haven't wanted to engage with are the big tentpole movies that have their own story, histories, and logic that I have to adhere to. That's just sort of it's not my strength. It's not really my interest. And that's probably one of the kinds of movies I tend not to engage with.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Right, now we're gonna call up Aedan.
Great.
Hello, my name is Aedan. My question kind of got inspired by one of the earlier scenes where Jennifer like pukes up this like black substance, and it almost looks like ferrofluid with like a magnetic field. And I was wondering, what was your decision to use like practical effects versus digital effects? And could you maybe just touch on how you chose one method over the other? And
Yeah. It was a combination. I tend to, even when I know I need to lean on digital effects primarily. I mean, at the time there were fewer digital effects that could look good, which unfortunately, to some degree, I think we see the seams of the technology of that time and of that budget level in the film. But for the most part, I think the most successful effects in the movie are largely, analog real world effects. And in the case of that scene, I know, I'm trying to think if I dealt with it in Aeon Flux. I don't think I had, but I just think when people actually throw up on screen and you believe it, it's much more visceral, right? So I just wanted a rig that could just look real, And then I knew that the pain in the ass about it would be that we'd have to clean it up every time, shoot it again. Each time the spray is a little different, knowing that we'd eventually have to kind of augment it to like be that perfect kind of projectile vomiting. And it's really weird. I've worked on a lot of things that have ended up using projectile vomiting as some kind of story point. And I'm like, what is it about projectile vomiting and me? But I don't like shy away from it at all. I'm always just like, oh my God, let's crack this nut. Because I just love solving those kind of problems. But that was an interesting thing because it was always in the script that these spiky, sort of tensile, almost like it would take on this animal effect. And we did a lot of tests with those magnetic things that you can shape with all the like needles and everything. And we just decided to use a combination of real elements and then some visual effect augmentation at the time. And that was pretty much how I probably dealt with most of the effects in the film. It was a combo always.
Cool. I think that was chocolate syrup, right? That she was puking up. Is that?
It was like syrup mixed with something to make it black, and I can't remember what it was. Because she also had to have it like dribbling out of her mouth, and at a certain point she was pretty bummed about having to keep doing that. But yeah, so, and she had to have it on her teeth. That was the thing. And it needed to read as like black liquid, getting wetted down with saliva on her teeth. And so, I mean, honestly, like that's some of the most fun part of the process for me still, is that when you're working with real special effects teams, first of all, they come at a problem with so much enthusiasm, and there is something so thrilling about working with people who want to find, whether it's in hair and makeup or in literal physical effects or fire effects or explosions or props. It's like all about telling a story and solving a problem. And there are just so many interesting people who work in those departments. And I don't want to take anything away from the world of digital effects, which has gotten much, much more sophisticated and just better. But those practical effects, nothing beats them, because you're looking at something real from the beginning. So I just love the whole process of, trying all the different materials that can make something happen on screen like that. Super fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have Valkyrie come up.
Valkyrie, like Ride of the Valkyries?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, everyone thinks I named myself after the Marvel Valkyrie. I'm like, no.
No, yeah.
Not quite.
You're going back further.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm really curious about how, especially in like 2009, you went about making like a really woman-centric story. Not only that, but one that's especially queer in an industry that's kind of been described both to me and in general I've heard as like a boys' club. So how did that, like, I'm curious how that went from like a pitching standpoint, and like how that went for you personally as well.
Yeah. It was interesting because Diablo Cody, who wrote the script, had she and her director partner on her first film, Juno, were on the beginnings of screening that movie when I first met them about Jennifer's Body. And so I had a sense that Juno was going to reach a lot of people, and I had this sense that it was going to be nominated for awards and even for an Academy Award. And as the months continued, I was like, I think Diablo is going to win. And so there was this kind of moment of shifting, just where it's a short window, but it's a beautiful window, where the same studio that made Juno was like, so Diablo, what do you have next? And she said, I really want to make this crazy horror comedy, Jennifer's Body. And so she had gotten it through the system a little faster than I think it would have ordinarily gotten through the system. And there was a lot less pushback toward her because her voice is so distinctive, and she was in the process of getting rewarded for that very specific, distinctive voice. And so it just kind of created a little bubble of freedom for us to work, where we were able to hire actors that were somewhat well-known and meaningful, but we could and we were able to work within a budget that didn't break the studio's bank, but made it still achievable for us to make the movie. So that was part of what her momentum was, part of how the movie got made. And honestly, the idea of the queer lens on the film was always just embedded in the storytelling. I mean, it was always in the script that these two characters were sort of mysteriously almost in love with one another and constantly in opposition to one another. And when I read that, I was just like, well, that's a lot of relationships. Like, I didn't see it as honestly as straight or queer. I just saw it as like, this is speaking to something very true. And it's maybe a product of me coming from a generation that just didn't know to or didn't want to identify or categorize those identities or labels. And there was a kind of freedom in terms of both me and Diablo's sort of sensibility around, I want to say queer experience, queer identity. It's a big creative part of my development. It's a huge part of my social life and social circle. I have so many people in my life that have shaped me who are queer. And so like that all, I don't know, it just was sort of built into the movie, and we didn't make a big deal of it when we made it. And then it kind of got, I think, seen later by the audience, which I'm so thankful for.
Awesome. Thank you. It's very informative.
Thanks.
So as a director, what is your best advice for new directors?
Ooh, this is a really hard question right now because it feels like a really weird time. But I'll just give the advice that I wish I had heard, if that makes sense. First of all, when I was in college and trying to be a filmmaker, I wasn't really trying to like figure out how to have a career or what my career would be. Like I wasn't thinking that far ahead. Honestly, what I was doing was almost religiously going to see movies, to look at art, to like read literature and poetry and listen to live music and to be inspired by the world I was living in. And to find inspiration, humor, joy, surprise in the world in front of me and in the relationships around me. And that's what builds an artist is I think the resilience to remain interested in the world. And I would say that today's generation faces this incredible challenge because, and when I say today's generation, I mean today's younger generation, that I see as sort of unprecedented. Like it wasn't something I had to face. And now I think I have a little bit of distance and can say, I think I see you facing it because I'm facing it too, which is a culture of distraction, reactivity, too much information, too much illusion of communication. Honestly, all of those things shave off the edges of who you actually are as a person and as a developing artist. Like there needs to be some degree of mystery, of silence, of privacy, of contemplation in finding the art you want to make. And it's just, I maybe want to say that I'm about to sound super old, and my 18-year-old son will be like, yes, you definitely sound really old right now. But my advice is to challenge yourselves to watch as much on the big screen as you can. Watch movies in other languages that are 5 hours long, that test your endurance. Like, try to find engagement with things that aren't familiar, and then find your way into like, can I appreciate this? Does this speak to me? If it doesn't, why? What do I want to say? Like, kind of go back and forth between the work and you. And I don't know, like, I hate to say get off your phones, but I really mean it. Like, I actually think it's like going to be the next, you know, carcinogen of our consciousness. And that to me is a real thing to wrestle with. Like, it's kind of like we're all of us, like older people like me, are looking to you guys to reject this stuff that has been designed to monetize every bit of your attention with every expectation that you won't just put it down and walk away. And the thing is, the moment you walk away from all of that distraction is the moment you become artists. And, or you're on the path. That's my advice. I don't know, maybe you guys would disagree with me. I kind of wish I could be there in person to just like read the room and see like, is this going over like a lead balloon, you know? But I'd be so curious to know what your guys' relationship is to a media system that you've been born into and that people like me have been able to see the difference between before and after in some way. I welcome whatever you guys have to say.
You're so right. I gotta get off my phone. Every time I go on TikTok now, I'm just gonna go, Karyn said no. I'm gonna put it away.
Hey, I love you, Karyn, obviously since Girl Fight, and I've always thought of you as this remarkable fighter. You know, you've taken some blows and you keep getting up, and I wondered, you know, you said the word perseverance. Could you kind of go a little bit longer on that idea? How have you brushed yourself off and gotten up the next day? You know, after you know all this crap, and because I think we were in the middle of a moment here culturally too, where there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of feeling like the world is stacked, things are stacked against you. You're a person who's always kind of figured out how to, you know, move that mountain. So can you, you know, tell us a little bit about perseverance?
You know, I have my days where I feel like I don't have any, and I feel really, you know, blue about the state of my life or the state of others' lives. And I do think something I've been paying more attention to is the art and the culture that springs out of chaos, oppression, violence, catastrophe, honestly. And there's so much actually that comes out of these incredibly chaotic times. There's so much expression that does seem to keep people alive in a weird way. Like I'm starting to see that art is a survival mechanism as much as anything else. And when we're told that it's like something for some privileged class, that's just a way to continue to try and control the narrative about the radical act of making art and participating in art and valuing art. And so that energy around how bad it can get and how much we need still to make things, absorb things, be in rooms together and listen to music, be in rooms together. Like you guys are in college, like be in rooms together and have a beer and like laugh and dance and like be crazy together. Like that is the resistance and the perseverance that I continue to find. And I feel like the only way we give that up is if we decide to give that up. And I just don't think we need to do that. Like, I just think we're all kind of more interesting than that and more, I don't know, fantastically varied from one another. And so I try to take strength in the fact that like time keeps marching on and change happens in ways that I don't always understand or can control. Like the number one thing that I am reminded of when you talk about being kind of knocked down, Walter, is that some of it's in my control and some of it is just like a wave that came that I couldn't control. And it's all about me just deciding to kind of get up and face the ocean again and decide to engage again with that chaos, and to find a way to not judge myself in that process or more like criticize myself or my progress. You know, like I know for you guys, there's so much about where you're at, how are you going to get your first movie made? Are you going to get your first movie made? All of that pressure is a noise that prevents you from actually thinking and investing and engaging with the work you want to make. And so it's just really important to kind of make those conscious decisions to disengage from all that noise, because it doesn't help you get your movie made.
I'm going to let Tiggy, do you want to ask the last question? And then we're going to ask you to indulge us in taking a selfie with you. Everyone's going to come up on stage and they're going to take a picture, if that's cool. So,
okay.
Send us out with your last question.
All right. So, going back to Girl Fight, your debut film, you made sure to cast a woman of color, and I know that it took you a while to get the movie made because of that decision. So, could you talk to me a little bit about that experience and what roadblocks you had to deal with?
Well, I mean, I made a movie when I was, 32 instead of 25. That's the roadblock or the consequence of making that decision was time. I had to keep just trying to put the movie together because I always knew that character and the whole world around that character were people of color. I was making the movie in Brooklyn. I was using my own experience with the boxing world and the amateur world in particular, and it's almost entirely people of color. It just would have been almost absurd, I think, for me to have imagined that world any other way. And so it's something that I had to say early on in the process, which is, oh, that's an interesting idea. That actor or this actor who's more well-known and who happens to be white, but that's just not the story I'm telling. Then as soon as you say that and you can kind of get back on track to the story you're telling, it allowed me to keep trying to tell the story I wanted to tell without getting hung up on, well, what if I did cast this young white girl, it wasn't the story I wanted to tell. And so it meant the movie was going to be made for a pretty low budget and made in a short amount of time. And the onus was on me to bring as much preparation and authenticity and kind of, I want to say, cultural attention to the world that I was depicting, so that people felt like they were being represented with care. So all of that ends up taking time, but that's the only I don't even see it as a regret. I'm so glad that I was able to keep pushing toward just making that version of the movie.
A huge round of applause for Karyn.
Thank you, everybody. You guys seem so great. It's a little weird that you're like in a square on the, but you guys seem great.
So I would love to have you in person one day. You talk to Phil about it. We'll fly you out, and
okay.
We're gonna get everybody up on stage here to take a picture with you.
Oh my gosh! Wow! All right. I'm not sure how in the world does this work, but I'm starting to see. And what's the name of this class, Walter? I realize I don't even know.
I teach a history class, but this is our film club, actually.
Oh, amazing.
So, yeah,
okay.
It's extracurricular.
Oh, that's so cool. So these are people here by choice.
Exactly right, yes. Exactly right, although I would judge them if they didn't come. All right, guys, on the count of three, girl fight. 1, 2, 3. Girl fight! All right, thank you, Karyn.
Thank you so much.